Hi, it's Sarah Jane here from Natural Heating, and today I thought I'd do a quick video about cold weather and cold weather syndrome in stoves and flues. Now you can probably see from my breath, which I think you can across the black, it's cold out here. This morning when I came into work it was -1. For here in the UK that's probably one of the coldest days we've had so far this year. Everything was frosty, cars have needed scraped the last couple of days. There'll be colder weather to come. It's the start of our real cold snap winter season. The ground was all frosty, as you can still see behind me. We've been in an hour or two, but everything's still a bit frosty. The car was solid, took ages to defrost. In weather like that, we get a lot of issues with cold flue syndrome. That's when people don't understand how to heat the chimney up properly. If you put your kindling in the bottom and your wood on the top and you're using the old fire lighting techniques, a lot of the time in this kind of weather, it can kick your ass and you'll fill the room full of smoke. And it's really important that when you've got low pressure or heavy fog, rain, and especially with extreme cold, that we heat that flue and chimney up as quickly as we can to avoid smoking you out. Now, I've got all 3 stoves in my showroom, well, 3 flue systems lit and running this morning. Do you see any smoke? No. They're all running up to temperature, they're all running really clean and nice, so there's no carbon deposits and there's no smoke. Now, this is our building here, for those of you who haven't seen before. Right from that telegraph pole at the green bit at the very end, that's all ours. Right the way down to that telegraph pole. It's quite a big building and there's lots in here, but we've just got a little showroom in the middle. So let's have a little walk in and you'll see what we're up to. So we're inside, and today we've actually got 3 fires lit and running because it's blinking cold out there. There's no insulation in here. There's no soft furnishings. There's nothing to keep the heat in. You see your breath inside when you come in the morning. So I do need a bit of heat running, especially first thing in the morning when it's so cold. So we've lit 3 burners this morning. So this is our first room, and you can see there's quite a few here. So you see that we've got a couple of stoves that have been in previous videos burning nicely over here. And we also have a big wham burning on this side. The ones on the other side I haven't lit yet. Now this is all about logs and lighting fires. Forget the fancy pine cones, I brought those back from Italy because I'm a bit obsessed. But this is how we normally light a fire. 2 logs on the bottom, a pile of kindling and a fire lighter on top. Standard way of doing it is called the upside down fire lighting method. So what we're trying to do is get the heat up the chimney as fast as possible to push that cold air out. Now if you've put your kindling on the bottom, what happens is it starts nice and fast and you think you're catching the logs, but it's psychological. So what happens is you're starting to make the heat and heat rises. Your logs catch on fire, but then the logs crash down on top of the kindling because it's the first point, is the weakest part of your fire, but it's the hottest part of your fire. So your logs crash down on top of the kindling. The hot air that's going up the chimney drops, the pressure drops, so the cold air pushes it back down, pushes your fire out, floods your room full of smoke. So that's why we use the upside down fire lighting method. So what happens here is it starts off slowly and it starts off gently. Leave the door slightly ajar, your air vents open, light your fire lighter, the heat starts going up and starts off with 1 layer at a time. Slowly, gently, takes some heat. Heat rises. Heat starts pushing the cold. But it takes 1 layer of kindling at a time, so the fire gets bigger and bigger and hotter, and we get more and more push to push that cold air up the chimney to get the cold air out so it can't come back down and smoke back. Now, I use a lot of kindling, as you can see. We chop it ourselves, so it's no big deal. It doesn't cost us any money. We're only using off-cut wood that's left over from all broken pallets and stuff like that. That's what we use for kindling because it starts nice and fast and hot. But I can't light a fire like this under this weather condition. And more often than not, all the logs that's in my basket are usually too big. They're too big under poor weather conditions. Normal weather conditions, this is like a dream when she's off, no problem at all. But when it's really cold out there and you need more force to get so much cold out the chimney, you need to chop those logs a lot smaller. So for those of you at the moment who are struggling with lighting your stove and it normally lights, have a think about what you're putting in, what is actually happening. Smaller logs burn faster. If you've only got big ones, it's time to make yourself warm and get that axe out, because you do need to split them down and start with smaller logs, especially so, even if they're kiln dried, even if they're good quality dry wood, which they should be anyway. You need smaller logs for lighting in especially cold weather conditions. The smaller you go, the faster they burn. It's kind of obvious, isn't it? So if you're burning stuff that's like this, or like this, for lighting your fire, they're far, far too big in this sort of weather. Even if it's kiln dried and it's softwood, we're looking for stuff that's small, about 2 inches square, yeah? So cut yourself a load of these and you probably need 4 to 6 of these. So, you know. So we're lucky, we've actually got a log splitter. And I've got a carry. So what we're doing this morning, just so we've got a good supply for next week, is we're actually just splitting, that's not a very good one, just where the knots are. So we're actually just splitting down some firewood into smaller sections to give us some bits that are a couple of inches square that will do for lighting fires, because it makes it much, much easier to get them up to temperature. And you do want them small. We want good big logs for general burning, but we're only looking for about 2-inch square pieces, and there may not be very many in your log delivery, because I'd hope you'd get mainly bigger logs, but we really want small ones. We really want small ones like Carrie's cutting here for fire lighting. So these are some of the logs that Carrie's cut. And this is how you want to load your fire for, especially when it's poor weather condition. Alrighty. So I've just picked a random stove in the shop. This is an Aspect 4. And we're just going to load it with some small logs. And there's plenty of depth in here. So I'm going to put 3 across the bottom. And then another 2 or 3 across the top. And then your kindling pile on top of that. Now, quite obviously, because this stove isn't even flued in, I am not going to be lighting this model today. It's just to show you how we lay out a fire. So I've got a good layer in the bottom. And then my kindling pile. And then a fire lighter and another layer. We use these fire lighters before we do keep them in the shop and on our website. These are called quick fire lighters. They're Scandinavian made. They smell of nothing and they're in a cellulose packet and they light so easy. So I only ever need to light that fire with one match once and she's off. And it never fails to light when you get your lighting techniques correct. And that does depend also on the weather condition. So you will see that I've got plenty of small logs in there, and they are dinky. There's not a lot of weight and feel in there. A couple of rows of kindling, another row of kindling on the top. And that's a big high fire. Yeah? See? It's a nice high pile. So as this starts to burn, you're going to take that first layer, then the next layer, then the next layer, and we'll have the air vent fully open, and the door slightly ajar, and I am not going to shut the door on this stove until those logs are catching fire. Only when my logs are on fire am I going to shut the door. But because these logs are small, they've got bigger surface area, so they're going to burn faster. I know you want a slower burn, but we've got to heat the damn thing up first. It's like a car. You're not going to get the efficiency out of it until you've heated up the engine. So your first load is important. You can light it like this with smaller logs all the time if you like, but most people don't want to go to the aggro of chopping them. And bigger logs, as long as they're nice and dry, are typically not a problem for lighting your stove and getting up to temperature. But when it's cold, really cold outside, we don't want to not create enough pressure to get enough updraft. The important thing is, because these burn hot and fast, once that stove is getting up to temperature Add nothing else. Don't open the door, leave it alone. Just let it do its stuff and let it burn till we've got a hot red ember base and we're ready to reload. There's no need to introduce any more fuel into that firebox. It's just a case of stack it correctly, light it correctly, give it enough time and make sure that there is enough heat pressure in that chimney to pull the cold out to make sure it doesn't smoke back. Also, for those of you that don't already have one, don't be a muppet. Make sure that you have a carbon monoxide detector. And I don't want to be seeing it in any shelves or random places. You need to look at the document, which I will enclose in a second into this video and put it on a time delay. You need to make sure that you've got a carbon monoxide detector correctly installed in your home and in the right place. Because if it's not in the right place, it's not going to do you any favours. Carbon monoxide is going to start off up here. Yeah. So we want to make sure that it's detected while it's still high up near the ceiling. So if your carbon monoxide detector is down here and you've gone to sleep in your chair, you could be dead before the carbon monoxide detector goes off. So it's really important that you follow the instructions for everything and make sure that your carbon monoxide detectors both work. That's why you call it Test It Tuesday. Press the button, beep, 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 make sure it works. Your carbon monoxide detector is in the correct placement and at the correct height to detect any issues. Typically, that could be smoking back, carbon monoxide, smoke, anything like that coming into your room due to incorrect lighting. But it can also be when people turn these things down at night. Oh yeah, I'm just going to bed. I'll just turn the air control off and shut my stove right down. Modern stoves, we don't want to do that. Modern stoves, we want to open it up for it to burn faster, because as those nice warm gases in your flue start to drop because you've shut that fire down and it's bedtime and you've gone to sleep, the cold is going to push those gases back down and actually can cause those gases to come back out into your room, which can cause carbon monoxide poisoning. Modern stoves are designed to push all the heat into your room. Therefore, the flue gases are cooler. And when you shut them right down to try and keep it in, which is not what we want to do, those cold gases can beat your ass and push it back into the room. And in most cases, when you read your manuals, especially under low temperature, it will tell you. Smokeless fuel especially runs at a much lower gas temperature. I'm waffling here. Some of the manuals, one of the manuals I've looked at recently, not for a brand we do, actually tells you there is risk of asphyxiation if you try and burn smokeless fuel banked down overnight. You shouldn't be burning it under low pressure or very cold conditions. So make sure you learn what you're doing. And if you need advice, speak to your supplier, speak to your installer. I'm afraid I can't take phone calls from every YouTuber with problems that isn't a customer, because I've got my own customers to deal with locally. But for any of my own customers, I'm on hand all times a day, night. When you need me, you can call for advice or for help, and I'm willing to help. For those of you that aren't, you need to speak to your supplier or your installer first. But if you're local and your customers are ours, or even you're further away, I'll help you anytime we can. We try and help everybody we can, but I get so many calls through people who need advice and stuff online. I just can't handle them all when you're not actually customers of mine, because there's only me and the girls here, and there's just not enough hours in the day, I'm afraid, to help everybody. But I'm hopeful that some of these videos help you along the way and give you the tips and tricks to get better performance out of your stove, because we want them burning nice and clean and clear. And it's only about reloading when you need to reload, not filling it up full. This stove is burning on about half burn at the moment. There's not lots of fuel in it. There's not lots of flame. It's nice and hot. It's got a good red ember bit in the inside. And I'm only burning the fuel that I need, not filling it right up. It's about burning the correct amount of fuel that you need for the heat output out and balancing the air. And it is a bit of a skill, and it takes a bit of time in learning your chimney, and every chimney in Flue is different. Anyway, I hope that helps. I'll rant over for today. End of the lecture. Thanks for bearing with us and watching yet another natural heating YouTube video. Happy New Year, guys.